Hello everyone, and welcome back to Healing Her Sacred Light. As you can see by the title, in today's video, we are going to be discussing a topic within our womb attacks series, and that is the dark history of obstetrics. In part 1, we uncovered how birth was taken from women. In part 2, we bore witness to the bodies that paid the price. Now we arrive at what followed, not progress, but consequence. What happens when a system built on violence becomes the environment new life enters through? This is part 3. Let's get started. So, by the early 1900s, birth had fully shifted into hospitals, and what followed is rarely taught. The era began with twilight sleep. This was a childbirth method aggressively marketed as painless birth, using morphine and scopolamine to cause disorientation and amnesia. The truth is, they didn't eliminate the pain. They eliminated the memory of the pain. Because the drugs caused panic and violent reactions, women were handled like prisoners, tied to their beds and restrained to prevent agitation. Many women woke up with bruises and no memory of why. The philosophy was clear. Your experience doesn't matter. The goal was to make women compliant and remove the mother's subjective experience entirely. Though the practice faded, the mindset that the body must be managed became permanently embedded in obstetrics. This mindset also demanded procedures like routine episiotomies. For decades, doctors claimed that cutting a woman's perineum was cleaner and safer than letting her body stretch naturally. It was a lie. We now know, and major medical organizations like ACOG admit that these routine cuts are medically unnecessary. They didn't prevent injury, they caused it. They led to deeper tears, more infection, and months of unnecessary pain. It was a surgical solution to a problem that didn't exist. But to perform these surgical techniques, they first had to render the woman immobile. This is why the system enforced the lithotomy position, forcing a woman to lie flat on her back with her legs in stirrups. It turned a powerful, active creator, the woman, into a stationary surgical site. We know with absolute certainty that this position works against gravity and actively narrows the pelvic outlet by restricting the movement of the sacrum and coccyx. This physiological interference has direct consequences. It leads to a longer second stage of labor. It forces the woman to push against gravity, and it drastically increases the likelihood of requiring operative interventions like forceps, vacuum extraction, or cesarean section. This position is used because it provides the doctor with the best visual and physical access. The needs of the physician overruled the needs of the mother's physiology. Furthermore, this shift to the hospital was not only medical, it was economic. Hospitals transformed birth into a billable event. Procedures generated profit. Training required bodies, and poor women became the testing ground. Midwifery was community-based, low-cost, and difficult to control. Hospital birth centralized authority and monetized it. We are told that the hospital saved us. We are taught that without the intervention of modern medicine, birth would still be the death sentence that it once was. But that is a rewrite of history. The truth is, birth did not become safer because we moved it into a hospital. In fact, for much of the 18th and 19th centuries, hospitals were often more dangerous for laboring women than home births attended by midwives, largely because of infection introduced by medical intervention itself. It only became safe because of two specific inventions that didn't become common until the 1930s and 40s. First came antibiotics, specifically sulfa drugs and penicillin. They were used to finally stop the very infections the doctors themselves had been introducing to women for decades. In reality, this drop in deaths wasn't a triumph of hospital management. It was science finally catching up to the damage doctors were doing. So basically, they eventually invented the cure for the very plague they were responsible for spreading, puerperal sepsis. The second invention, often cited as a savior, was a blood transfusion to manage hemorrhage. But we have to ask a question the history books avoid. Why did these hemorrhages become such a crisis in the first place? Before birth was moved into hospitals, midwives were the experts in managing the flow. As I mentioned before, they practiced expectant management. They didn't pull on the umbilical cord or rush the placenta. They waited. By letting the mother's body release its own natural oxytocin, the uterus would contract naturally, literally clamping the blood vessels shut. If things got heavy, they used ancestral herbal wisdom, motherwort and shepherd's purse to support the body's own rhythm. But when the man midwife took over, hemorrhage rates didn't go down, they actually went up through what we now call, and I've mentioned this term before, meddlesome midwifery. Doctors began manually pulling out the placenta, causing massive internal trauma and inversion of the uterus, using forceps, which created deep, uncontrollable tears, using early anesthesia, which relaxed the uterine muscles so much they couldn't contract to stop the bleeding. They broke the body's natural ability to protect itself, and then marketed the hospital as the only place that could save you from the disasters they were creating. Before these two tools, antibiotics and blood transfusions existed, the hospital was not a sanctuary. From 1800 all the way to the 1940s, it was basically a death trap. It wasn't until the mid-1930s that hospital mortality finally fell to levels comparable to midwife-attended home births. So this narrative that women were dying left and right until doctors saved them is a distortion of history, one that obscures decades of medical arrogance and erases the harm caused during the industrial takeover of birth. Most dangerously, it was designed to undermine your trust in your body's intuitive power. And don't be deceived. Just because the mortality rates dropped, it does not mean the hospital became a safe place for laboring women. Historically, medicine has only measured what it values. It tracks death, it tracks hemorrhage, and it tracks infection, but it does not measure trauma. It does not measure dissociation, the loss of bodily trust, or the spiritual rupture of a mother. In the eyes of a system built on metrics, harm that is not measured simply does not exist. For more information on obstetric violence and birth trauma, please check out the video on my channel. The system we have inherited today was not shaped by a commitment to women's safety. It was shaped by the men who invaded and exploited the female body. It was built on a foundation of racism, patriarchy, and domination. Because of this, hospitals today still prioritize speed, efficiency, and liability over trust, intuition, and well-being. We are living in the consequences of a system that views birth as a billable event rather than a sacred passage. Look at the evidence of this management in the rooms right now. Cesarean rates climbing as high as 50% in some facilities. Induction scheduled for the convenience of the hospital, not the necessity of the mother. Routine Tocin used to force a body that isn't allowed to find its own rhythm. Continuous monitoring that shackles a woman to a bed, denying her the movement her pelvis needs. The denial of food and water during one of the most energy-consuming events of a woman's life. It is the same cycle we've seen for centuries. The system intervenes, the intervention causes a complication, and then the system saves you from the very crisis it helped create. They sabotaged our biology, then sold us back our survival. Despite these attacks against our wombs, the feminine cannot be erased. She can only be forgotten. And right now, we are remembering. Something beautiful and fierce is rising again. The sacred birth movement. We are the descendants of the healers, the midwives, and the womb seers. All around the world, women are waking up, choosing autonomy, demanding consent, and reclaiming the throne of our own bodies. We are witnessing a revolution of the spirit. It is a return of midwives and doulas who guard a woman's energy like a sanctuary. It is in the rise of home births and water births where intuition outranks authority. It is in the revival of ancestral wisdom, herbs, massage, breathwork, and the primal upright positions that use gravity to open the pelvic portal. Birth is not a medical procedure. It is a portal where the worlds touch. It is a passage where a woman becomes something entirely new. They tried to take the knowledge. They tried to break the lineage. They tried to monetize the ceremony, but they could never take your power. As we speak the names of those who came before us, as we restore trust in our wombs, we bring the ancient wisdom back to life. This is how we heal the past. This is how we heal ourselves. And this is how we heal the world. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this series on the dark history of obstetrics. If you liked this series and you would like to see more womb wisdom, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.